Hobbes lived at the end of the Renaissance period, during the time from 1588 to 1679. His main concern was with the causes and characteristics of bodies. He was a die-hard materialist. Hobbes was concerned with three kinds of bodies: the physical body, the human body, and the political body, and he thought all were in motion. His philosophy gives rise to mechanical materialism. In this philosophy, mind, thought were not present. He thought only body and extension existed. So he says, by the visible things in this world and their admirable order, a man may conceive there is a cause of them which men call God, and yet not have an idea or image of him in his mind. The mechanical view of human thought is that perception was a physical phenomena and allowed us to sense things. Imagination was the retention of the image in our mind after it had been removed. It was a decaying sensation, much like the impress of your hand on a Swedish tempera mattress. Memory was imagination, but memory was distant, and the impress had faded somewhat. Thinking was a thought that was in motion, and one part was followed by another. So if we were to look at perception from Hobbes' point of view, he would think that if we did see a green flower, that it could be broken up into two phantasms, something green, and then the second one, something flower. There would be a quality plus an object. Now, he was a nominalist in that the relation of words to each other is based upon the relation of events, so that there was nothing existing, for example, in the higher order or abstract nature of words. There were no forms in the Platonic sense at all. Human, then, points to no general reality. And by this he's not saying that the particular man doesn't exist, just the concept human has no ontological basis in reality. It is a nominalist concept. Hobbes is significant in his moral philosophy, and he begins the discussion of moral philosophy with a statement on the state of nature. And the state of nature means that there are no civil constructs like laws or society or norms of any conventions of any kind. What he says about the state of nature is that life is nasty, brutish, and short. He said men gravitate to pleasure and they deviate from pain. And why does he say this? Well, he says in the state of nature, all humans are equal and equally have the right to do whatever they consider necessary for their survival. And since they're materialists, there's no moral thought. For example, if you and I met down a forest path and I had a basket of apples and you had a basket of oranges, and I said, I'm really tired of apples, can I have one of your oranges? And you said, well, sure. Well, what I do is I grab the oranges and my apples and I run and I take both. And he says this is what happens in a state of nature, and I have the right to do this if I need to survive. Now, we can do in the state of nature, he says, what we would, against whom we see fit, and to possess, use, and enjoy all that we can or would be able to get. Now, even though there is a first natural law, which is to seek peace and follow it, in foro interno, we are bound to desire this first law, and that these natural laws should take place. But in foro externo means we are not bound at all to put into effect the law, seek peace and follow it. So Hobbes claims that an altruistic act is impossible. He says that anything that anybody does is because they do it because they want to, out of self-interest. There is a paradox that goes along with the ethical egoism that begins with Hobbes. And let's take a look at this matrix here. We have two characters. We have Bob here, and we have Jane. Now, Jane's position is the Y position in this set of numbers, and Bob's position is the X position in this set of numbers. Let's say both Bob and Jane decide not to steal from each other. They get a 2, Bob gets a 2, and Jane gets a 2. Now, what if Jane decides to steal, but Bob does not steal? Well, Jane gets the most. Jane gets a 1, and Bob gets a 4, which is the least desirable. Let's move up here now. Bob decides to steal, and Bob gets 1 here. Jane gets 4. Here, they both decide to steal from each other, and it's less desirable than if they do nothing at all, so they each get 3. But look at the entire matrix as a whole. Bob only gets what he wants 1 out of 4 times. Jane only gets what she wants or maximizes her self-interest 1 out of 4 times. So, in this situation, for an ethical egoist to try to maximize self-interest, it only happens 25% of the time. In order to take care of the paradox, it is agreed that we, in social society, by convention, by agreement, by contract, social contract, we agree to submit to a strong authority. And in doing so, we agree not to lie, not to cheat, not to steal, and not to kill. These are the moral side constraints that allows me to pursue my self-interest and, universally, you to pursue your self-interest. And as long as we agree to these moral side constraints and submit to the strong central authority, then we supposedly are able to overcome the paradox of ethical egoism, and we can do actions that maximize self-interest. The duties to self under this paradigm is to promote my self-interest within the limits of the moral side constraints. The duties to others, I can promote other interested activities when it is compatible with my self-interest. But all positive obligations to assist others are rejected. The social ethics implied by this theory is there is a minimal state. There is no enforced benevolence. There are no paternalistic laws, for example, helmet laws, or other laws that are enacted on your behalf to ensure your health and safety. And the only justification of state coercion is the protection of individuals. The economic model is a completely hands-off, laissez-faire capitalism.